Flew
Yeah,
off.
thank you on that.
Oh.
Okay. Yes. All right. Eventful day, night. Any questions?
Howie, when you look at the trading for Jonathan Greenard, how does he compare to the decision not to bring back Jalen Phillips?
Well, would hate to compare John to any other player. I think just in a vacuum, obviously always looking to improve our pass rush, to improve our lines. He's one of 6 guys that's had 12 or more sacks 2 of the last 3 years. Just a really fun guy to watch, a guy that we've been studying for a long time. Through the offseason, things change. Things change from when you start the offseason to as you come to the draft process. You get a truer sense kind of as the process goes along of the things that you have, the things that you need, the things you can acquire. And we felt like at this time, this was a really good move for our football team to acquire him, to improve our defensive line. Really excited to get him.
Listen, obviously his sack numbers were down this year, but his pressure numbers were pretty good. What kind of season did he have in 25, and what did you see on the tape from him?
Yeah, I mean, there wasn't a game that we didn't watch of his this year, and what you see is a relentless player with physical tools. He can win in multiple ways. He is hard to block. I know when we play Minnesota, we are worried about where he is at all times. Just a really good player, obviously a captain on that football team. So we just felt like we had a really good D-line, but we really wanted to elevate it to another level. And obviously we saw how that happened last year. And as we've gone through it, and we went through the draft yesterday, and after the draft last night, it really made sense for where our football team was to go and acquire this player.
With a player like Eli, who's relatively new at that position, what do you look for to know that his progress is going to continue to trend the right way?
Want to answer a question?
Sure. The guy is super talented, and athletically, he does some things that nobody else can do, and just to be able to create mismatches with him, and on third downs and first and second down situations, like he is a tough cover and catches everything, good after the catch, speed, quickness, and so really excited to have him. And that's our job as coaches to develop these guys and continue to develop them. I think it's exciting that he has only played the position for a short time. And so with guys like that, we've done a ton of homework on the guy, obviously, a great character guy, high football IQ, having played quarterback, like those guys continue to develop, and excited to work with him because he's got a lot of room to improve as well.
How do you feel about the projection for Eli as a blocker, and how important is that development to his overall skill set in this offense?
Yeah, I think, obviously we talked a lot about the athletic traits and the pass catching, and got to continue to develop as a blocker, but we're really excited about that. Again, when you haven't had a ton of reps at it, he's had a lot of reps. He's had reps at it, but continuing to develop with that, and guys get better, with experience in those situations too. And that's our job is to accentuate the strengths that they have and develop the things that need to be improved. And but really excited, just really excited to get that style of player that can create those types of mismatches in the pass game, to go along with a talented room with tight ends that we have currently.
I think also, when we look at things, we're trying to find out, what the guy can do really well. If you kind of focus only on what the things that guys can't do, you're going to have some of the negatives for the top players in the draft. And I think when you find guys who have unique skill sets, and we have a lot of confidence in our coaches and our staff to develop players, especially when they have high football IQ and high character, and we know they're tough. It's exciting.
Why did you prioritize Markeil at the beginning of the third round?
Yeah, Markeil Bell was a passion player for us throughout the process. Obviously, unusual size, unusual length, hard to find. But really, when you watch the tape, he is hard to get around in pass pro. He had 0 quarterback sacks allowed this year playing for the University of Miami. This is a 21-year-old player who was the #1 JC recruit in the country coming out at the University of Miami. And, just watching the tape, this is one of those guys that you said, what would happen if he went back to school this year? And to have an opportunity for him to learn from the guys that we have on this roster, and we spent a lot of time with him. We spent time with him here. We spent time with him in Miami. We had a lot of eyes on him, and just a sponge, high character guy, and just felt like, this was a guy that's hard to find. And again, when you watch him in pass pro and you watch his ability, it's hard to run through him. It's hard to run around him. He's got good feet for a big guy. You could see that. And so just, again, a unique guy.
Going past catcher, what's that do for the future of the offense? And do you view those two picks in a vacuum or in conjunction with each other?
Well, I think that for us, looking at where we were and where the board was, most importantly, it really fit. Both of those guys stood out on the board when we were picking. As we got closer to 54, felt like it was really apparent who we were going to pick at that spot. It really stood out to us where Eli was. We didn't go into the day saying that was the only guy that we wanted, because there were a lot of good players there. But when you look at those guys and spending time with Markeil and his family today, and just seeing their unique ability to impact the passing game, and the kind of players they could be for this team going forward, it's exciting. It's exciting just to have those guys on our team, and that's no disrespect to the guys that we have here. That's a good tight end room. I mean, I think the first thing that that we talked about with Eli was Dallas, and what kind of player Dallas is. And, obviously that's a great room. And for us, we have a lot of good players in that room, and we'll be open to keeping as many good players on this team at that position and other positions as we can.
You traded away, obviously, third-round pick tonight and the 2 fourth-round picks last night to get Markeil. What does that say about, maybe how you feel about the draft, or how you feel about the players you're getting and everything?
Yeah. I say this all the time. You tell me who's going to be available at the pick, I'll tell you how good the draft is, and there's not going to be a pick that we have in this draft that there won't be a player that we're excited about taking. I promise you that. And so it was more about the quality of the player. It was more about the impact they could have on the team. I think for us, we understood kind of some of the things we wanted to address on this team, some of the things that we thought were important, but it had to align with the players available. And sometimes in those situations, necessity never made a bargain. And when you have guys that you think are really good players and you have an opportunity to get them, I know I've regretted sometimes, arguing over some of those picks, and understanding they're very valuable. But also, when you have a lot of confidence in the people that you're bringing in here and their impact that they could possibly have, feeling like, the right things to do for our team, and felt like those trades were the right things to do for our team. Obviously, yet to be seen how they work out. There's humility in understanding that, but feeling good about those decisions.
Howie, with Greenard, just the timing of the trade, long rumored to be available, how long were you working on that? Was there something to the timing of tonight?
Yeah, there were a lot of conversations. And again, I think it goes to how the offseason goes. And I think that, there's arcs to the offseason, and you start with free agency, and you have a plan as you go into free agency. And of course, you'd like it to go perfectly your way, but it doesn't always do that. And then you adjust as free agency evolves, and you get into the draft, and you have a good feel for where guys you think are going to be going in the draft and what you can get and how you can help the team. But mostly by sticking by your board and sticking by your process, and understanding that, you can't make things up out of thin air if they're not available. And so for us, I think throughout this process, throughout those conversations with Minnesota, I give a lot of credit to Rob Brzezinski, throughout this process, being tough but fair throughout the negotiations. And I think that as we got through and got through the first night and saw what was there, and it's hard to know until you get past the first night of the draft, and felt like, we met last night after the draft and felt like, we should go forward with this. We thought it would really improve the team, and, bringing him here tonight, I know he had a chance to go to Sixers game, just feel great about the person, feel great about the player.
There's a couple more.
Greenard and the deal today, obviously that came with a new contract.
Took an offensive lineman.
Yeah,
You proud of me? We took an offensive lineman. Yeah.
that was that.
Yeah.
With Greenard, with the contract, obviously that came with a new contract. What boxes did you want to check there to make that kind of commitment in that player, and how have the last several years informed that decision?
I mean, really good player at a really important position. Obviously, we have all the information about what the edge rushers are making here. What was the other part of the question?
Could I follow up on if that
Yeah.
has any trickle-down effect on how you view the futures for Jugs Hunt and Nolan Smith?
No, I think for us going forward, that was a lot of the conversations and a lot of the things that we were talking about here in the last couple of weeks, and ensuring that we were still going to have the flexibility to sign our players, our young players on defense. And that was why a lot of these meetings took place. I think there were a lot of balls in the air here as the offseason started. Obviously, it's not a secret that there was another edge rusher that we were interested in signing, and so as we looked at that and some of the things that we'd done in the interim, and then as the draft went on last night, and obviously getting Lemon, I think it allowed us to kind of plan a little bit here going forward, and understanding some of the things that we needed to do.